Hello, my name is Peter Nanfeld, and I'm here today with Janet Howard, an individual that many in our community have known over the years. Janet has been active for more than a decade at Shell Point, beginning first of all as a staff member at the village church. Janet currently serves as chairperson of our missions committee at the village church. And she and I are going to talk a little bit today about an upcoming event at the church called our Fall Missions Focus. And Janet, being chairperson of the missions committee, I suppose you know more about this than anybody else. So give us a little bit of an introduction to what we can expect this weekend.
I think it's going to be an interesting, challenging, fun weekend because we're going to hear from a group, actually just a father and daughter, who lead an organization that Rick Sessoms, the leader, and the father who will be here, began called Freedom to Lead. And you've been a leader. I've been involved in training leaders. So it really interests me. How do you train leaders, but in a way that's kind of non-traditional?
Very much so. Let's talk for just a minute about Rick. You've known Rick for some time, maybe longer than I have, but we both met him many years ago. What do you know about him? What can you tell us about him?
He's always learning something new,
Yeah.
which is no surprise. So I first met him and his little girl who's not a little girl anymore, when she was a toddler.
Yeah.
And they were teaching at the same seminary in Indonesia that I was. And since then, he has gone many routes through missionary activity, being a pastor, being involved in a seminary, a university, and now finally began his own organization called Freedom to Lead.
Right. Yeah, I said I didn't know Rick quite as well maybe as you did, but because I wasn't living in Indonesia at the time as you were.
Sure.
But during those years, I was visiting the country a couple of times every year, and every time I went, I heard about Rick Sessoms, his ability as a teacher, a communicator, a preacher, his ability in the language, and so I knew he was somebody special. And as it's turned out over the years, he's accomplished a lot in his life.
He really has.
And what do you know about Michele other than knowing her as a toddler?
Michele is an amazing young woman. I don't know how she's done it, but she has traveled overseas, I guess because of her love for different cultures, just picking out all the things around the world. She's been in China. She actually worked in China for 10 years, learned Mandarin and Uyghur. Is that how you pronounce that?
I don't know, but something like that.
Okay. And then she's been involved in Africa, done short-term trips there, picked up more languages there. I think she's probably in her 40s, big smile. I see her on Facebook.
Yeah.
She's always in an airport going somewhere.
Yeah.
But you know what I love about her is her enthusiasm for life, like her dad. But how can she learn all these languages? Because I didn't know this when she was a little girl. She's almost deaf like her mother. 80%
Hearing loss.
Hearing loss, 80%. And it doesn't seem to throw her. She'll just jump in and learn something new.
You know, we've learned Indonesian over the years.
Right.
You much better than I.
I doubt it.
But I have a hard time learning it, and I can hear normally, I think. I can't imagine her accomplishment.
I can't either.
Yeah.
I really can't.
Quite remarkable.
And I didn't think about it until I read the wonderful article you wrote in Shell Point Life. And then I realized she has the same hearing loss that her mother had.
Yeah. And her mother taught her to read lips.
Oh, that's the secret.
Well, part of the secret.
Yeah.
Other part of the secret is probably perseverance
I
and
think
just
so.
hard work.
Yeah.
Anyway, she and Rick will be here. And they'll be talking about training leaders. Who are the leaders we're talking about anyway?
Good question. Not the leaders in the U.S., although I know they've had impact on leaders. We're talking about leaders in cultures where reading outlines and memorizing facts doesn't sink in. So India, they've done a lot of work in India, Africa.
So they've used a different methodology, obviously.
Yeah, which intrigues me.
Yeah.
I like to learn different ways.
Yeah.
So,
As a teacher, you would.
Right. And what intrigues me is that when we were in Indonesia, the best way to get the students' attention was to tell stories or refer them to their own background and what they believed as fables and tales. And so that's what Rick is using. It's called story-centric. So you learn by telling stories, and in that story are all the things that leaders need to know, like all the character traits, the good things. So I'm really excited.
It reminds me of somebody else that told stories in his teaching.
Oh, my husband, Dave Howard.
David, but also a person named Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah, he did a lot of that teaching with parables.
Teaching with stories.
Right. Anyway, as we think about the weekend and this concept, people are going to get a chance to hear about that, I think, a little bit in the academy class.
Which will be great. He's going to talk about, which I did not understand, that even here in America, people learn by stories or music or drama or art.
Symbols.
Symbols, right.
Yeah. So that'll be in the academy class, and when is that going to be?
It's going to be Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Don't want to miss that.
In the Grand Cypress.
In the Grand Cypress, yeah.
And then something else happens on Friday night, and this is going to be a time when we hear both from Rick and his daughter Michele, I think. They're going to lead us through, as I understand it, a kind of a interactive session where we're going to remember our leaders. I think that's the topic of the program.
I think so.
And so that ought to be interesting to see. In small groups, we're going to interact with one another and learn some of the principles that are important in Freedom to Lead.
I really look forward to that.
Yeah.
And it will be fun. I hope lots of people come, because it's not going to be a churchy kind of thing.
Right.
So I hope many come Friday evening.
I think we'll be in circle
Kind of
groups,
informal
yeah.
groups, learning,
And I
sharing.
want to say just a word too about Saturday morning. You know, we've had several men's breakfasts over the years with the special speakers.
Sure.
And this Saturday coming, we're going to have another men's coffee starting at 9:30. Rick will be speaking, but not about freedom to lead so much. He's going to talk about retirement and how we can be effective as people in retirement. Some of us are going through a transition from work into retirement.
Right.
Others of us have already passed that point. But how can we be most useful in our retirement? So Rick is going to talk on the subject, who am I in retirement?
That's
Saturday morning.
But it's only for men.
Only men, right. And then Sunday, tell us about Sunday.
Well, on Sunday, Rick is going to give a very interesting topic for his message in the morning. He has been seeing supernatural things around the world, some that perhaps should not be given a lot of notice to, but yet they're grabbing everyone's attention, helping us to understand the source of the supernatural. In leadership training, I'm really looking forward to this.
He calls it the brush with the supernatural. That's the topic.
Very good.
And then in the evening?
In the evening, Michele and Rick, again, will be explaining more about freedom to lead.
Okay.
And who knows, we might be involved in this, just our interest, because they have opportunity for people to also go to these places and be involved in leadership
Okay.
training.
Maybe some shell pointers.
I'm thinking like that.
One other thing, Jen, is I like the logo. The logo shows the birds flying in that V formation.
Right.
And Rick explains they chose that because the bird in the front is not just there in a position of honor, but he is there in a position of enablement, helping the other birds to fly more easily. And we think of leaders sometimes as being the honored persons, but he emphasizes that it's not so much a position of honor, but as a position of enabling so that other people can reach their full potential. So I think it's a great idea for a logo, and that's the whole concept of freedom to lead, of course.
And that's great, because as we see birds flying in formation, we know that they change places too.
Right.
And so
Other people step forward.
Other people step forward to be
Right.
the leader, which is fascinating.
Great. Well, thank you, Janet, taking this time with me today, and we look forward to seeing many of you this weekend at all these events that will form the Missions Focus Weekend at the Village Church.
And it
Please
will be
join us.
great.
Yeah, please join us.
Thanks.